obesity, and here's physical inactivity. So physical inactivity is a major risk factor for heart disease, but what I really want to enforce is, as you see on the next slide, is that if you become more active, you reduce the other 4 major risk factors. So being physically active will lower your body fatness. It will lower your total serum cholesterol, and more importantly, it will decrease your LDL, your bad cholesterol, and it will increase your HDL, your good cholesterol, protecting you from heart disease. If you're hypertensive, exercise has been shown to reduce both your systolic and diastolic blood pressures. And as I will show you on the next few slides, exercise is a very good therapeutic tool for reducing the incidence of type 2 diabetes. So again, being physically active reduces 5 of the 6 major risk factors for heart disease. So clearly it's exercise is medicine here. So if we move on to diabetes, first thing I want to point out is, notice that I'm talking about type 2 diabetes. Well, as it turns out, type 2 diabetes accounts for 90 to 95% of all the diabetics in the world. So it's the most common type of diabetes. And the underlying characteristics of type 2 diabetes is known as insulin resistance. Your body becomes less responsive to a given amount of insulin. So it doesn't do its job, which is to promote glucose or sugar uptake from your blood into the tissues so they can use it for fuel and maintain their health. So again, type 2 diabetes is a result of insulin resistance, your body becoming less responsive to insulin. And as a result of that, you may have to take oral injections of insulin. You may have to go on an insulin pump. There are other mechanisms and there are other medications out there to treat this. Now, if we look at the risk factors for becoming a type 2 diabetic, we see that one of the major ones is obesity. So what I'm showing you here in both men and women, as your BMI increases, that's your body mass index. And again, that's a measure of your body fatness. So as the BMI goes up, you're accumulating more body fat and you're becoming overweight and into the obese category here. As your body fatness goes up, as occurs with increasing obesity, your insulin resistance goes up. So your risk for becoming a type 2 diabetic goes up dramatically. So as we've seen in this country, there's an exponential rise in the obesity rates in the US. And we've also seen, not surprisingly, an exponential rise in type 2 diabetes. Now, if we look at the risk factors for type 2 diabetes, on the left here, we have non-modifiable risk factors. Risk factors you have no control over. That's your genetics, your family history, your age, your ethnicity. And so you have no control over those. But on the right, we have the modifiable risk factors, the ones you do have control over. And once again, we see that physical inactivity is a major risk factor. But what I want to point out here is, by emphasizing with these red arrows, is that as you become more active, you can decrease your body fatness, you can decrease your blood pressure, and you can lower your cholesterol. So again, physical activity helps reduce not only the sedentary component of these risk factors, but it lowers other major risk factors associated with being type 2 diabetes. So when you go out and exercise, we'll see on this slide, one of the things that happens when you're out there exercising, your muscles start needing fuel from your blood. So they have to extract glucose or sugar from your blood into the muscle cells to use for fuel. Well, you know, the definition of diabetes is you have chronically elevated levels of glucose or sugar in your blood. So exercise by itself, if you just go out for a run or a swim or a cycling, exercise, while you're out there exercising, your blood glucose levels will drop. So if you happen to have high blood glucose levels before you exercise, while you're exercising, the exercise bout will tend to normalize those and bring them back down to normal. But most importantly, on the right here, is that the evidence is very clear that exercise increases your insulin sensitivity. Or another way to put that, it lowers insulin resistance. And in fact, the scientific studies are quite clear. There's no drug on the market, no pharmaceutical company has come up with a drug more potent than exercise to improve insulin sensitivity and to reduce insulin resistance. And once again, remember, the underlying complication with type 2 diabetes is an increase in insulin resistance. So again, exercise is extremely good. And how it does this is it stimulates the muscles to be more sensitive to insulin that's being released from your pancreas. So it promotes glucose uptake to a more efficiently now that you're exercising on a regular basis. So in the interest of time, let me just talk about cancer here. So exercise can be used both to prevent and lower risk factors for cancer, but it's also used for cancer patients, especially post-chemo patients, to help them deal with their condition. So exercise can lower cancer rates at various sites throughout the body by enhancing your natural immunity. So one of the things we see is that regular exercise boosts your baseline immune function, and that will help you deal with cancerous cells. So one example of that is the immune system makes these natural killer cells. One of their roles is to seek out and destroy cancer-infected cells. Exercise also boosts your level of antioxidants. I'm sure you've seen on TV commercials, people are promoting their drinks because they're loaded with antioxidants. Well, antioxidants are important because they can help reduce oxidative stress or free radical damage to your body. So these reactive oxygen species, such as these free radicals, can actually cause mutations in cells leading to cancer. But exercise improves your antioxidant defense system, thereby lowering your risk for damage by these free radicals. Exercise can also lower your body fat, and it can reduce certain growth factors, such as insulin growth factor 1, which can promote cancer growth. So if we look at the major sites of cancer, which I show you on this slide, the major sites of cancer occur in the lung, the breast, the prostate, and the colon rectal area. In this red line here, what I have is, if there's a solid red line, that means that exercise has been shown to clearly lower the risk factors for cancer at these 4 sites. And again, I want to remind you, these are the 4 major sites of cancer here. I have a dashed line around the ovarian cancer because the evidence is still coming in. It looks promising now, but it's not as definitive as it is for the other sites for cancer development. So as we see on the next slide, this just shows you, this is just one study looking at the effects of exercise on various diseases. I've already talked about heart disease and diabetes, but I just want to highlight that you can see here that it reduces the risk of breast cancer and colon cancer. But there's a number of studies out there that show this also true for lung cancer and prostate cancer as well. So based on many studies, on the next slide, we basically have a take-home message here. And the take-home message, again, this is looking at over 1.4 million adults at 26 different types of cancer sites. And the take-home message is shown here. Leisure time, physical activity. Again, you don't have to be training like you're a triathlete, but just leisure time activity lowers the risk of 13 of the 26 cancers that were investigated. And so that's why they're recommending that healthcare professionals start advising people of the benefits of exercise on reducing this risk of cancer.
I just wanted to pop in real quick, if either of you don't mind. There was a couple questions that I thought we might be able to touch on. One of them, when you speak about exercise, if there's any difference between exercising in a gym or exercising in other locations. So that was one question. And then a question about asthma. And I think I'm not exactly sure, but maybe touching on if if you're seeing health benefits for individuals with asthma as well.
I think, and Dr. Mazzio, you can say from your experience too, but for all of these studies that we're showing you. Like, did you guys even know that, most people know, okay, exercise prevents diabetes, exercise makes me heart healthy. Did you know it prevents cancer and dementia? Like, these might be new to you. And so how to do that is really whatever way you are going to exercise every day. So if going to a gym every day isn't realistic, your exercise doesn't need to be in a gym. You can stand right where you are right now and dance and jump up and down and follow a video. As long as you are sweating and getting out of breath, that is the goal of exercise. So it doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing. I'd love it if you were having fun because I care about the brain too. But really, as long as you are out of breath and sweating and need to change your clothes, that's how you know it's good exercise. Whether you're doing a jump rope, whether you're doing a dance class or Zumba, or you're swimming, or you're out on a bike, or you're at the gym on a machine, you just have to make sure you're sweating for a long enough period of time. And we really want that to be, the goal would be an hour a day, but some people start with a half hour a day and work up to an hour. Dr. Mazzio, would love to hear your perspective too.
Yeah, Dr. Sanders is exactly right. It doesn't matter where you're exercising. The organization that sets the guidelines for the health benefits of exercise is known as the American College of Sports Medicine. And in their guidelines for exercise, how much exercise is needed for health, they have 4 categories. They have exercise intensity, exercise duration, exercise frequency, and mode of exercise. And you can do those anywhere. So just for example, what they recommend for people just starting out that have been sedentary for a while, the frequency of exercise should be 3 to 5 days per week. The duration of exercise should be anywhere from 20 minutes to 60 minutes per exercise session. Again, there's a wide range there based on your initial level of fitness. The intensity of exercise is generally recommended to be within a certain range, such as 60 to 75% of your max heart rate reserve, or if you do have access to measure your maximal oxygen uptake, they do present it in terms of your VO2 max. And lastly, the mode of exercise, it depends upon what your activity is. In other words, they do want you to get the health benefits, they do want you to do an exercise that recruits large muscle groups. But there's a wide variety between different activities, whether you're interested in more aerobic and endurance exercise versus strength and resistance exercises. But it doesn't matter where you do it, as long as you adhere to those guidelines, keep your heart rate elevated for a significant period of time, and you do that a certain set number of days per week, you will reap the health benefits. And those guidelines can also be used for training adaptations to improve your performance and fitness as well.
I saw someone had mentioned walking. So walking is great. As we showed you in slides earlier, being sedentary is a really big problem for our health. So that means staying still all day is a problem for our health. But walking alone is not enough for getting the exercise benefits of all of these diseases we've been talking about. So I was going to move back to the sedentary slide, but too much sitting, being still, is different than just exercising for an hour a day. So we want you to exercise, and we also want you to move more throughout your day. So taking walks, choosing to walk to the store or walk to someone's house if you can, or just move some more, get up and walk around the room more, that is fabulous. And that helps with not having too much sitting, but it doesn't count as exercise unless that we want you to do for improving heart disease and diabetes and dementia risk and ADHD, all those things we've talked about. You need to be sweating and out of breath. So you need to be doing something that really makes you work. So we want you to do both. We want you to be walking and enjoying time, moving more compared to being still more. And we also want you to do more intensive real exercise that makes you sweat and out of breath to get all of these benefits. You guys have great questions. We'll definitely leave some more time at the end also for more. Thank you, Erin. We're going to go back. Dr. Mazzio shares some more about how exercise impacts the brain again, which is so important.
Yeah, so one of the things that has become very clear in the medical profession is that chronic stress has negative impacts on your overall health. It can affect heart disease, it can affect certain types of cancers, it can lead to depression, all these types of things. So chronic stress is not good for the body. It reduces certain glucocorticoids that have negative effects on your body. And as a result of that, again, it can contribute to health complications, many health complications. But what people don't seem to realize is when they think about exercise, they think about the cardiovascular system, the heart pumping blood, they think about the muscles contracting. What they don't realize is that the brain's very active during exercise. And what you can see in this next slide is that if you're just out walking, this is just 20 minutes of walking. Notice the difference on the left and the right, the electrical activity in the brain just from walking. So the brain is very active while you're exercising. So there's that mind-body connection there. So please keep in mind that the brain's not on hold or on standby while you're exercising. It's playing an active role in movement. And the more complicated the movement, the more active the brain is. So if you're doing a skill like tennis, for example, we can see the brain would be lighting up even more. So having said that, a number of studies here at the University of Colorado have shown that people that exercise regularly are less vulnerable to the negative effects of stress, the basic life stressors. So sedentary people, which we see here on the left, if they're subjected to chronic stress, that can have an effect on disease, that can lower their immune system. What we're showing you here on the right, that are people that are physically active, they have a more robust response to stress. In other words, the negative effects of chronic stress are not as bad in active people as they are in sedentary people. So it has that somewhat protective effect against the negative effects of chronic stress, such that they're going to be less negatively impacting various diseases and your immune system as well. So we know that chronic stress lowers your immune system, and it can make you more susceptible to various viruses, whether it's the flu virus or the COVID virus. We know that regular exercise boosts your baseline immune system. So there's definitely benefits of exercise on reducing chronic stress. And we see on the next slide is that these are some of the mechanisms. So chronic stress over here on the right has all of these negative impacts on the body. But we see that exercise counteracts those negative effects. Here are those antioxidants, which I was talking about before, where they can neutralize those free radicals that can cause cancer damage. They can also contribute to other diseases as well. And we see all these other effects in the brain, all the way up to including depression and anxiety, which Dr. Sanders is the expert on. And we can see that regular exercise does positively impact the brain and your ability to respond to chronic stressors.
I think a really interesting thing in this slide too is neurogenesis. So that means making new brain cells. So you probably don't think that your brain is growing. You think, oh, but it's just staying the same old size in my head all the time. But you are making new brain cells and making new connections. And so stress decreases that, but exercise increases that, which is really powerful.
So this is just a little summary slide of everything that I've talked about and Dr. Sanders has talked about regarding the benefits of exercise on your brain. Anything from reducing stress over here on the left to improving preventing depression, lowering your risk of dementia and Alzheimer's disease and cognitive function. So that's just basically a summary slide just to remind you that the brain is reaping benefits from participation in regular physical activity.
And to remind you that it doesn't matter what your activity looks like. So we already talked about that, but want to highlight that again, that just getting out there and exercising gets all of those benefits of brain health and all of the other body parts health, no matter what you're doing, as long as you're moving and sweating. Really important. And I think it's important to talk about also that there are a lot of medications and commercials out there that promise to improve your brain health. But what we've talked about here today is based on lots of studies where thousands of people have been enrolled and scientists have worked for years in a really scientific setting to compare different medicines and supplements to exercise. And in all of the things we've talked to you about, for better or worse, exercise wins out. And so there's no medicines that we have that can do these powerful things that we've talked about as good as exercise can do. So keep that in mind when you see a commercial or you hear about something. Those sound tempting, but it's more important for you to spend your time and energy on getting good exercise. That will be better for your brain health and all the rest of your health. So we have time for questions also.
So if you have questions, you can put them in the Q&A. If you have anything that's coming up. I don't know that we touched on, but any suggestions for somebody with asthma and how they could continue to kind of stay healthy, and if that's a struggle for them to get this kind of exercise where you're out sweating?
Yeah, it's a great question. So with asthma, we do have medicines that target the asthma symptoms so that you can keep that feeling under control and not feel as out of breath, but then still be able to exercise. So that would be the goal, is to use medicines to treat the asthma, but then use exercise to help make the rest of your body healthy. And we know if you're working on exercising more, even though you have asthma, it will make your lungs in the end stronger, and it will make your heart stronger, which then makes your lungs stronger. So it's helpful, even though it can be hard at first, but inhaler type of medicines can be helpful to get those first feelings under control so you can get to the exercising.
Yes, and an aside to that, there's also phenomena of exercise-induced asthma. And what's going on there is, particularly in Colorado, if you go out on a particularly cold and dry day, you will increase your chances of having an episode of exercise-induced asthma. So also be aware of your environment, when you're going out, what time of day, what the weather conditions are, what the pollen level is, to just try to reduce the chances of having an episode of exercise-induced asthma.
Great. So there did come a question in, and I think this was covered, but it's a great clarification point of how much exercise do we need in one day, and what should be our goal? So maybe just a recap of that.
Yeah, of course, it depends what your goal is. Are you exercising to improve your fitness and performance? Or you are exercising to improve your health and lower risk factors? So again, if you're just want to lower risk factors for the diseases we've mentioned today, you don't have to exercise as high of an exercise intensity as you do to improve your overall fitness and performance. In a sport, for example, you don't have to exercise as long, and so the intensity and duration don't have to be as high. The frequency, some of these athletes are training 5 to 7 days per week. The frequency doesn't have to be as frequent to reap the health benefits. Now, there's a whole different set of training guidelines if you want to try to improve your performance, your VO2 max, which once again is your maximal oxygen consumption, which most endurance athletes use as the marker of their cardiovascular fitness. So there's a whole different set of training guidelines, which again is covered by the American College of Sports Medicine in their position statement on training guidelines, if you want to try to improve overall fitness and performance.
Great. So
and we've included here a list of some of the research studies that we cited. So if that's helpful for anyone, but just so you know what we cited also.
Yeah. That's great. So there's a couple questions I have rolled in about how does nutrition play a part in this? Nutrition, hydration, and then kind of some questions specifically about specific drinks such as Red Bull and beer, and so how those factor in. So some questions around nutrition.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's really important to be hydrated before and during and after you exercise, because you're pumping blood through your body, and blood is liquid. And so you need to put liquid in to have enough to pump around. And so staying hydrated is really important, both Red Bull and beer. So things that the ingredients of those would be caffeine and alcohol, are things that would dehydrate you. So they make you pee out more of the water than regular water would help you keep in your blood that is pumping and giving you the health benefits of exercise. So I would say I would limit how much Red Bull or beer or other things with caffeine or alcohol you drink, and maximize the amount of water that you drink. If you're thirsty, drink, and stop and drink while you're exercising.
Yeah, the other follow-up to that is most people don't realize they're dehydrated. They don't feel thirsty. So even if you've been exercising outside for an extended period of time, and of course here in Colorado, there's low humidity, it's dry air, you might not feel thirsty, but you could be becoming dehydrated. And that is important because dehydration does adversely affect your performance because it reduces your cardiac output and blood flow to the muscles. So even if you're not thirsty, you should try to consume some fluids while you're exercising. And of course, the Gatorade Institute has conducted hundreds of studies looking at the proper sports drinks, and they have all these variations in the sports drinks based on how much glucose or carbohydrate should be in your drink. You know, you don't want it to be too concentrated because it affects the absorption rate. They generally dial it in, the carbohydrate concentration in these sports drinks to around 4 to 8% glucose or fructose solution.
Great.
I see that David asked about walking to work and if that is enough. So David, I think that that is amazing that you walk to work. So that's great. To get more movement into your day is fabulous, but it doesn't count as your exercise for the day because you don't get sweaty while you do it. So you have to get sweaty and change your clothes and be out of breath. That's the exercise we all need. Kids, adults, whatever our diagnoses are, we all need to sweat and be out of breath to get exercise that improves our heart and lungs and diabetes and brain and everything. So exercising indoors or outdoors, that doesn't matter as long as you are sweating and really getting yourself tired. So do you guys want to brainstorm in the chat some things you could do in addition to walking? You could type in some ideas that you have of what could really make you sweat. And maybe we can all get ideas from each other and think outside the box. So this guy is in a Special Olympics race where he's snowshoeing. So I tried snowshoeing last weekend and it really made me out of breath and sweaty. So that was really great, but not something that I've tried very much. Also, it's not something that you can do every day, right? You need to have the right amount of snow and the right equipment. So we need to also brainstorm things we can do in our house, rain or shine, every day to get yourself sweaty. So let's see if you guys have.
That's great. And I think somebody did suggest Zumba classes online, which are a great suggestion for everyone. All right, maybe one final question is asking about a low blood pressure. So I don't know if you all have that area of expertise, but around if people with low blood pressure sweat less.
I don't think so, but I think that everybody sweats different amounts, whatever your blood pressure is. So some people sweat a lot, some people don't sweat a lot. It's as long as you feel tired. I use sweat as a metaphor, but some people get really sweaty, not doing that much. Just as long as you get feeling hot and sweaty, that's a good sign that you're exercising hard enough. I love the idea of jumping jacks, walking the track, but remember, walking, you got to go fast enough so that you feel out of breath, so that you feel tired. So walking would count for preventing sitting all the time, but it doesn't count as the exercise every day you need to prevent all these diseases.
Yeah, so when you exercise, depending upon the ambient conditions, your body needs to thermoregulate. So it'll divert some blood flow to the skin for cooling. I don't think that has, your blood pressure doesn't have any impact on that. The thermoregulatory properties are pretty much individual to each person and based on environmental conditions.
I love some of these ideas people have come in of dance class. That's great because you can do a lot of free dance classes online. Special Olympics Colorado has great links to some of these online classes. Planking, someone else put, that's great. I try to plank, it's hard. Walking up and down the steps, that's a great idea. You can do it at home. Doing some chores can make you out of breath. So doing dips on the table, these are great ideas, you guys.
Yeah, and if you have any type of way to monitor your heart rate, keep track of your heart rate to see how high it gets while you're exercising and how long you keep it in that elevated heart rate zone.
That's a great suggestion.
So,
Great. So yeah, there's a lot
Fazio,
of,
do you have more insight about how nutrition affects your exercise or performance?
Well, clearly, for endurance athletes, you don't want to be on the keto diet because that depletes your carbohydrate stores in your muscle. So endurance athletes that are exercising for a long time at high intensities can deplete their glycogen stores in their muscle. Those glycogen stores are the way in which your muscles store carbohydrate. Now, as it turns out, you only have a limited amount of carbohydrate stored in your body. Even an average 50-pound person has plenty of fat, even if you're relatively lean. You're not going to deplete your fat stores, but you can deplete your carbohydrate stores during a prolonged bout of exercise. And so you want to make sure before you engage in a prolonged exercise bout that your carbohydrate stores in your muscle are adequate. Otherwise, it will adversely affect your performance. And if you've seen people running marathons and they hit the infamous wall at mile 22, they're pretty much out of carbohydrates. And that's why they're struggling so much and collapsing at the end.
that's great. Lots of great questions about nutrition, and programmatically that gives us some great ideas from Special Olympics that we can start providing much more information and suggestions and ideas about healthy nutrition and how to be eating right for your exercise. So thank you all for these great suggestions. One question about swimming, because we didn't touch on that. What should this exercise look like for swimming, and how many laps might one want to do?
Yeah, so swimming is a pretty unique exercise because you're horizontal there. So your stroke volume pretty much from the get-go is at the max. And stroke volume is the amount of blood being pumped out of your heart with each beat. But, swimming is a great exercise because it uses both upper and lower body. So depending upon how fit you are and how long you can swim for, I would recommend swimming highly because not only does it use both upper and lower body, your orthopedic problems are much less because they're not weight bearing exercise where you're pounding your knee joints and your hip joints all the time. So swimming is a great exercise because it uses a large muscle mass. And so, but it's still the same guidelines as any other activity. You should try to exercise for 20 to 60 minutes per exercise session. You should try to do it 3 to 5 days per week. Again, this is just for health. This isn't for becoming Michael Phelps type of swimmer. And you should do it at your relative exercise intensity where you feel that you're pushing yourself and you've reached that ventilatory threshold.
Great. I do think this is a good question. Somebody asking about golfing and bocce, which are two sports that many of our athletes participate in that aren't as physically rigorous. Any thoughts on how to kind of, if these athletes are able to kind of incorporate more kind of higher intensity into those two sports?
I think doing those activities are fabulous because you get to be around other people, you get to be outside, you get to be moving around. So that gets to what we've talked about, decreasing the amount of sedentary, which means being still amount of your life. So those are great activities to keep doing, but I don't think that you get out of breath and sweaty and really a high heart rate with those activities. So I think that my recommendation would be keep doing those activities because what you're doing during the day, incorporating moving around is great, better than doing a movie or something else. So they're great activities to have as hobbies, but also bring in other activities at home or at another time in the day. So you could do bocce in the afternoon and a Zumba class in the morning, or golf in the morning and a high intensity class of Special Olympics with jumping jacks online in the evening, or a run in the evening. You choose, or a swim, but whatever makes you feel really tired, and keeping golf and bocce as sort of activities that are fun and social.
Yeah, and if you do golf, leave the golf cart at the clubhouse.
Right, walk till
More moving.
There you go. All right. Well, this has been such an amazing presentation.
Oh, and
Thank you
someone
all.
asked about cross-country skiing too. Oh,
Oh, did that one come up? Oh, I didn't even see that. Cross country skiing is pretty great.
yes. So I
Uh,
love cross-country skiing, especially with Special Olympics. So,
There are
and
some questions coming in quickly, just that we are going to send out the PowerPoint. So that will be available to all of you. There's some great information in there. So I just want to make sure that people know that that is in there if you need it. I'm sure these questions could go on for days. There is a question about heart rate. I don't know if that one's easily answered. Just what is the heart rate we're trying to get to it as we're working out.
So, dependent upon your age, you have a maximal heart rate that you can achieve while you're exercising at a very high intensity. So normally what we do in the lab is we put someone on a treadmill and we subject them to a graded exercise test where every 2 minutes the exercise intensity becomes more severe, and we take them all the way up to maximal exercise where they're about to pass out, and we see what their heart rate is at that workload. But keep in mind that, and there's tables for this, you can look them up online, based on your age and sex, it'll tell you what the estimated max heart rate is for your age. So when people want to train, let's say you want to train between 60 and 75% of your max heart rate reserve. Let's say your max heart rate's 200, your resting heart rate is 70. So you have a reserve there of 130 beats in which your heart can fluctuate. And then you take the 60% of the 130, you take 75% of the 130 and add it to your resting heart rate. And that gives you a target heart rate zone for between 60 and 75% of your max heart rate reserve.
so it's not a simple number, but we or your Special Olympics coaches can help you calculate that number. And I think that's a great goal to work towards, exercising for a whole half hour or a whole hour at 50% of your maximum heart rate, or at 75% of your maximum heart rate for some of the time, so that you know what that is. So I think that could be a whole other conversation that we can have. And I think that's really important, because sometimes it's really hard to know, am I exercising hard enough to be able to prevent dementia and prevent diabetes and prevent heart disease? And so being able to follow a number is actually a really great idea.
So if you do think of additional questions that come up after this, you can email those to probably Stephanie, I think right now, who or Leah or Jenna, which are all on our Special Olympics staff, or myself, and we can email Dr. Mazzio and Dr. Sanders and see if they'd be willing to answer those. And we can send those out to you with the PowerPoint as well. Because I know sometimes as you're digesting this information, questions come up, or you think of other things. So we have just so appreciated both of you joining us today. This is such a great presentation, and so valuable for our athletes and our families to continue to learn about this. So for all of our participants, there will be a survey that you can respond to and let us know how this was. If these types of presentations are interesting and helpful, we want to keep providing them. So definitely give us your feedback. And I think that's all we have today. I appreciate you guys coming, and we'll be in touch.
Thank you so much for having us.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.